The space around Kepler Station looked like a graveyard of broken dreams. Massive ships floated in the darkness, their hulls cracked open like broken eggs. Some still glowed with dying fires inside them. Others had gone completely dark, their crews either dead or barely hanging on to life. The station itself sat in the middle of this mess, spinning slowly around the neutron star that had made it famous. Once, Kepler Station had been the pride of the galaxy. Ships from hundreds of different worlds came here to trade. Families raised their children in its safe corridors. Now those same corridors were filled with scared people who had nowhere to run. The Zephyrians had started this war 3 months ago. Their crystal ships looked like giant diamonds floating through space, beautiful and deadly at the same time. They wanted control of the station because it was the perfect place to collect the special energy that came from the neutron star. Their weapons could turn rocks into glass and glass into nothing at all. But the Nexus Collective had other ideas. Their ships looked like they were alive, covered with metal that moved and changed shape. Part machine, part living creature, they were scary to look at. The Collective believed that all technology should be shared and controlled by them. They said the station belonged to everyone, which really meant it belonged to them. The third group in this fight was the Luminari. Nobody could really see their ships properly because they were made of pure energy. They glowed like tiny suns and moved faster than anything else in space. The Luminari thought they were better than everyone else because they had evolved beyond having physical bodies. They wanted the station because they said only beings of pure energy could understand how to use the neutron star's power properly. For 3 long months, these 3 groups had been shooting at each other. Their weapons were so powerful that they could destroy entire planets. When they fought, the space around them got so hot that metal melted just from being nearby. The energy shields on their ships flickered and sparked as they tried to protect themselves from attacks that could crack moons in half. On the observation ship called Cosmic Witness, beings from all over the galaxy watched the battle with growing fear. The ship stayed far enough away to be safe, but close enough to record everything that happened. The beings inside came from dozens of different worlds, but they all had the same worried look on their faces. The Zephyrian Dreadnought Eternal Crystal just lost its main power core, announced Keth, a 4-armed being from the Spiral Worlds. His green skin had turned pale as he watched the readings on his screen. That's the 5th capital ship destroyed today. Next to him, Ambassador Yelan from the Peaceful Rings shook her head sadly. Her people had never fought a war in their entire history. Watching this battle was like watching her worst nightmares come true. How many civilians are still trapped on the station? She asked in her musical voice. 53 million at last count, replied Dr. Xanos, a floating brain creature from the think tanks. The evacuation ships can't get close enough because of all the weapons fire. Every time someone tries to help, they get caught in the crossfire. The battle had reached a point where nobody could win, but nobody wanted to stop fighting either. Each side had lost too much to give up now. The Zephyrian fleet had started with 90 ships. Now they had less than 30 that could still fight. The Nexus Collective had lost even more. Their biomechanical ships could heal themselves, but even they couldn't fix damage this bad. The Luminari were harder to count because their energy forms could split apart and come back together, but their attacks were getting weaker each day. Look at this, said Captain Vorth, the military observer from the War College. He was a thick-skinned being whose people had fought in dozens of conflicts across the galaxy. Even he had never seen anything like this. They're using quantum torpedoes now. Those weapons can tear holes in space itself. On the main screen, they watched as a Zephyrian crystal ship fired a weapon that made reality bend and twist around it. The torpedo moved through space like a crack in a window, and when it hit a Nexus ship, part of the enemy vessel simply stopped existing. But the Nexus ship fought back with biometal tendrils that reached across thousands of kilometers to grab onto the crystal ship and start tearing it apart piece by piece. At the same time, 3 luminary energy beings combined their power to create a lance of pure light that cut through both enemy ships like a sword through paper. The light was so bright that the observation ship's screens had to dim automatically to protect everyone's eyes. This is madness, whispered Ambassador Yelan. They're going to destroy everything, including themselves. Dr. Xanos's brain case bobbed in agreement. My calculations show that if this continues, all 3 fleets will be destroyed within the next 18 hours, and the station will be caught in the final explosion. 53 million people, repeated Captain Vorth quietly. All dead because these 3 species can't share a single space station. The worst part was that everyone knew this was just the beginning. These three groups were the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. If they destroyed each other here, it would leave a power vacuum that would lead to chaos everywhere. Smaller species would start fighting over the scraps. Trade routes would collapse. The golden age of galactic peace would be over. "Sir," called out Ensign Mora from the sensor station, "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range scanners." Captain Vorth moved to look at her screen. "What kind of strange?" "There's a ship approaching from the outer system, but it's not like anything in our databases. The design is completely unknown." Keth's forearms moved quickly over his control panel. "Let me get a better look at this." His screen filled with technical data. "That's impossible. This ship is using chemical rockets for propulsion, and its hull appears to be made of simple metal alloys." "Chemical rockets?" Dr. Zanos sounded shocked. "Who still uses chemical rockets? That technology is thousands of years old." "The energy signature is very low," continued Keth. "Whatever this ship is, it's not very advanced. Probably some primitive species that wandered into the system by accident." Ambassador Yelan looked worried. "Should we warn them away? They'll be destroyed if they get caught in this battle." "I don't think they'll listen," said Captain Vorth. "Look at their course. They're heading straight for the center of the fight." On the screen, the unknown ship looked tiny compared to the massive dreadnoughts that were tearing each other apart. It was shaped like a long cylinder with engines at the back and weapons that looked almost primitive. There were no energy shields visible, no quantum manipulators, no reality-bending technology at all. "What kind of fools fly into a battle like this with a ship like that?" asked Keth. "The kind that don't understand what they're getting into," replied Dr. Zanos. "This appears to be a human vessel, based on the design patterns in our first contact database." "Humans?" Ambassador Yelan tried to remember what she knew about that species. "Aren't they from that small planet on the edge of the spiral arm? The one with the dangerous environment?" "That's right," confirmed Dr. Zanos. "Death World classification. High gravity, violent weather, dangerous predators. Their civilization only developed space travel recently. They're not supposed to have ships capable of interstellar travel yet." "Well, apparently they do," said Captain Vorth grimly, "and they're about to fly right into the middle of the biggest battle this galaxy has seen in 1,000 years. The human ship continued on its straight course toward Kepler Station, completely ignoring the massive explosions and energy weapons going off around it. Either the humans inside were incredibly brave, incredibly stupid, or they simply didn't understand what they were flying into. "Should we try to contact them?" asked Ensign Mora. Captain Vorth thought for a moment. "Send them a general warning on all frequencies. Tell them this is an active combat zone and they need to turn around immediately." But even as he gave the order, he had a feeling the humans wouldn't listen. There was something about the way their ship moved, steady and determined, that suggested these beings had made up their minds about something, and whatever that something was, they weren't going to be talked out of it. The galaxy was about to meet humanity for the first time, and it was going to happen in the middle of the deadliest battle anyone had ever seen. The human ship moved through space like it owned the place, while the three alien fleets continued their deadly dance around Kepler Station. The small vessel maintained its course with steady determination. The beings watching from the cosmic witness couldn't believe what they were seeing. "They're not responding to our warnings," reported Ensign Mora, her tentacles twitching nervously over her control panel. "I've sent the message in 17 different languages and on every frequency we know." Captain Vorth's thick hide wrinkled with concern. "Maybe their communications equipment is too primitive to receive our signals." Dr. Zanos floated closer to the main screen, his brain case glowing with intense thought. "I've been analyzing their ship design. It's fascinating in its simplicity. They're using fusion rockets for propulsion, but the way they've arranged them suggests they understand physics better than we initially thought." "Better how?" asked Ambassador Yelan, her musical voice carrying a note of curiosity despite her fear. "Look at the positioning of their engine clusters." Dr. Zanos manipulated the display to show a detailed view of the human ship. "They're designed for maximum maneuverability in combat situations. This isn't a cargo vessel or an exploration ship. This is a warship." Keth's forearms moved rapidly as he gathered more sensor data. "Warship or not, it won't last 5 minutes against any of those dreadnoughts. Their hull is made of steel and titanium. Those are materials we stopped using for anything important thousands of years ago. And yet they're here. pointed out Ambassador Yelan. They must have some reason for confidence. On the battle screen, the Zephyrian fleet was regrouping after losing another crystal ship to a combined Nexus luminary attack. The remaining crystal vessels formed a defensive formation, their surfaces reflecting the light from the neutron star like deadly prisms. Each ship was over 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet. The Nexus collective ships responded by merging some of their smaller vessels into larger ones. The biomechanical technology flowed like liquid metal, creating new configurations designed specifically to counter Zephyrian tactics. Weapons that looked like living things sprouted from their hulls, reaching toward their enemies with hungry intent. The luminary energy beings pulsed with increased brightness, preparing another coordinated attack. When they fought together, they could create weapons made of pure thought that could ignore physical shields and attack the minds of their enemies directly. And into this chaos, the human ship continued its steady approach. "Wait," said Dr. Zanos suddenly. "I'm detecting a transmission from the human vessel." "Are they finally responding to our warnings?" asked Captain Vorth. "No, sir. They're broadcasting on a narrow beam directly to Kepler Station. Audio only, very basic signal. Can you decode it?" "Already working on it. Their language is in our first contact database from when we discovered their planet." Dr. Zanos paused for a moment as data flowed through his enhanced brain. "Translation complete. The message is very short. What does it say?" "Kepler Station, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Indomitable. We received your distress signal. Help is on the way." The bridge of the Cosmic Witness fell silent. Everyone stared at the screen where the small human ship continued its approach toward the most dangerous battle zone in the galaxy. "Distress signal?" Ambassador Yelan's voice was barely a whisper. "The station sent out a distress signal?" Keth quickly checked his records. "Yes, I see it now. A general emergency broadcast sent 3 days ago when the battle started. Standard procedure when civilians are in danger. But that signal would have taken weeks to reach any inhabited system," protested Ensign Hora, "and even longer for anyone to respond." Dr. Zanos computed the math quickly. "Unless they were already traveling at high speed when they received it. The human ship must have been en route to somewhere else when they picked up the distress call and changed course to help." "One ship," said Captain Vorth slowly. "They sent one ship to help 53 million people." "Maybe it's not just one ship," suggested Keth hopefully. "Maybe this is just the first to arrive and more are coming." Dr. Zanos checked the long-range sensors carefully. "No, I'm not detecting any other ships with similar energy signatures anywhere in the system. This appears to be it." Ambassador Yelan felt her heart's breaking. "They don't understand. They can't possibly understand what they're flying into. Someone has to tell them." "We tried," reminded Captain Vorth. "They're not listening to our warnings." "Then we have to try harder," she insisted. "I won't sit here and watch these brave beings die because they're too ignorant to know better." On the screen, the UES Indomitable was getting closer to the battle zone. The ship was now close enough that the alien fleets would surely notice it soon. When they did, the humans would learn very quickly why everyone else in the galaxy stayed far away from battles between advanced civilizations. "Look at their weapons," observed Dr. Zanos, magnifying the image. "Kinetic projectile systems, chemical explosives, some sort of directed energy weapons, but very low power compared to what we're used to." "Those aren't weapons," scoffed Keth. "Those are antiques, museum pieces." "The humans don't seem to know that," said Ambassador Yelan softly. The first alien fleet to notice the approaching human ship was the Zephyrians. Their crystal vessels had the best sensors, designed to detect the precise frequency signatures of different energy types. When the Indomitable came within range, alarms started going off on the Zephyrian flagship. Commander Xylax of the Eternal Harmony studied the readings with confusion. "What is this primitive vessel? Is it some sort of probe?" "Unknown, Commander," replied his tactical officer. "The design doesn't match anything in our databases. Energy output is minimal. Threat level appears to be 0. It's probably just some scavenger looking to pick through the wreckage," suggested another officer. "Should we destroy it?" Commander Xylax considered this. His people were in the middle of a fight for their very survival. Every weapon shot used on unimportant targets was one less shot available for their real enemies. "Ignore it. We have more important concerns." But the Nexus Collective had also noticed the human ship. In their biomechanical minds, every new variable in the battle needed to be evaluated and categorized. The ship was small and apparently harmless, but the collective had learned to be thorough about everything. Scanning unknown vessel, reported Integration Node 7. Configuration suggests primitive warfare design. Possible independent faction. Threat assessment, ask the fleet mind, minimal. Recommend observation until hostile intent is confirmed. The Luminari, floating in their energy forms, found the human ship even more puzzling. They could sense the life forces aboard the vessel, and what they felt confused them. Most species showed fear when approaching a battle like this. Fear was the logical response to overwhelming danger. But the humans aboard the Indomitable weren't broadcasting fear. They were broadcasting determination. And something else that the Luminari couldn't quite identify. Something that felt almost like anticipation. These beings approach without terror, observed the Luminari collective consciousness. Are they perhaps evolved beyond the base emotion of self-preservation? Unknown. They do not appear to be energy beings like ourselves, yet they show no concern for their physical forms. Fascinating. We shall observe their behavior. None of the 3 alien fleets considered the human ship a threat. How could they? It was tiny compared to their dreadnoughts. Its weapons were primitive. Its technology was thousands of years behind theirs. If they thought about it at all, they assumed it would either run away once it got close enough to understand the situation, or be destroyed accidentally by a stray energy blast. They had no idea they were about to meet the descendants of persistence hunters from a death world. They had no idea that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. They had no idea that the crew of the Indomitable looked at overwhelming odds the same way their ancestors had looked at mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. As prey, Captain Sarah, Chen stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the massive alien vessels tear each other apart with weapons that could crack planets. Her crew worked calmly at their stations, checking weapon systems and preparing for combat. There was no fear on their faces. There was no hesitation in their movements. Distance to the station, she asked. 2 million kilometers in closing, Captain, replied her navigation officer. Tactical assessment, 3 separate fleets all engaged in mutual combat. Best estimate is 96 enemy vessels total, though it's hard to get an exact count with all the energy interference. Weapon status? All systems green, Captain. Railguns loaded and ready. Missile tubes are hot. Point defense systems are online. Captain Chen nodded. Signal the engine room. Tell them to push the reactors to 110%. We're going in. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a difference between being advanced and being dangerous, and that difference was about to save 53 million lives. The first sign that something was different came when the human ship entered the battle zone and didn't immediately explode. Captain. Chen watched the tactical display as energy beams powerful enough to melt asteroids flashed past her ship. The Indomitable shook from the pressure waves of nearby explosions, but kept flying straight toward the center of the fighting. Where any sane species would have turned and run, the humans accelerated. Enemy vessels are beginning to target us, Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the tactical station. Zephyrian crystal ship bearing 27 Mark IV is charging weapons. Good, said Captain Chen calmly. That means they're not ignoring us anymore. Helm, take us into the asteroid field. Use the debris for cover. The Indomitable dove toward a cluster of wrecked ships and floating metal debris. This was what remained of the first week of fighting, when both sides still thought they could win quickly. Now it served as a deadly obstacle course that most ships avoided. Most ships weren't piloted by humans. Captain, that debris field is highly unstable, warned the navigation officer. One wrong move and we'll be crushed between 2 pieces of wreckage. Then don't make any wrong moves, Chen replied. Take us through the densest part. Make those big ships work for their shots. On the Cosmic Witness, the observers watched in amazement as the small human vessel threaded through spaces that seemed too narrow for anything larger than a fighter craft. Pieces of destroyed ships tumbled all around them, some still glowing with residual energy from whatever had killed them. That's impossible, breathed Keth, his forearms moving frantically over his instruments. The gravitational fields in that debris zone are shifting constantly. No computer could calculate a safe path through there. Maybe they're not using a computer, suggested Dr. Zanos. Humans are known to rely heavily on intuitive decision-making. Intuition? Ambassador Yelin sounded shocked. They're flying through a death trap using intuition? The Zephyrian crystal ship that had been targeting the humans fired its main cannon. The beam of crystallized energy was hot enough to vaporize iron and precise enough to hit a target the size of a coin from 1,000 kilometers away. It should have turned the Indomitable into expanding gas. Instead, the beam struck a piece of floating wreckage that the human ship had positioned between itself and the enemy. The debris exploded in a brilliant flash, but when the light faded, the Indomitable was still there, already moving to its next position. Did they just use debris as a shield? Asked Captain Vorth in disbelief. Brilliant, whispered Dr. Xanos. Absolutely brilliant. They're turning the battlefield into their ally. But the Zephyrians weren't about to give up. 3 more crystal ships moved to bracket the human vessel, firing from different angles to prevent it from hiding behind more wreckage. Their coordinated attack should have been impossible to avoid. The Indomitable responded by doing something that made every military observer in the galaxy question their understanding of physics. The ship suddenly accelerated toward the nearest Zephyrian vessel, not away from it. As the crystal ship's weapons fired, the human ship was already inside their minimum targeting range, too close for the massive guns to track. Ramming speed. Captain Chen ordered. Captain, our hull won't survive a direct collision with a Zephyrian dreadnought, protested her first officer. Who said anything about colliding? Chen smiled grimly. Fire all railguns at point-blank range, then use their explosion to boost our momentum. We're going to slingshot around them. The Indomitable's railguns fired in rapid sequence, sending streams of tungsten projectiles into the crystal ship's hull at velocities that turned metal into plasma on impact. The Zephyrian shields flared and overloaded, and cracks appeared in the beautiful crystal structure of their hull. But more importantly, the recoil from the railgun fire, combined with the explosion of the impacting rounds, pushed the human ship into a tight orbit around the much larger crystal vessel. The Indomitable used the enemy ship's own mass to change direction, swinging around to attack from an unexpected angle. Impossible, gasped Commander Zilax aboard the Eternal Harmony. No ship can maneuver like that. The gravitational stresses alone should tear it apart. Perhaps their ship is more advanced than we thought, suggested his tactical officer. No, Zilax studied the readings more carefully. It's exactly as primitive as it appears. They're just using it in ways that defy common sense. The human ship completed its impossible maneuver and fired again, this time targeting the crystal ship's engine array. The railgun rounds punched through weakened shields and shattered the delicate crystal matrices that powered the massive vessel. The Eternal Harmony began to drift, its engines failing one by one. But the Nexus Collective had been watching too, and they responded with the cold logic of their biomechanical minds. 6 of their ships moved to surround the human vessel, their living hulls shifting and changing to create new weapon configurations specifically designed to counter this new threat. The collective ships opened fire with bioplasma cannons that could adapt their energy frequency to penetrate any known shield technology. The weapons tracked the human ship's movement patterns and predicted where it would be, filling space with deadly energy. Captain Chen watched the incoming fire and did something that no military academy in the galaxy would have taught. She ordered her ship to fly directly into the neutron star's gravity well. Captain, her navigation officer shouted. That's suicide. The gravitational forces will crush us. Not if we use them right, Chen replied. The neutron star's gravity is the strongest force in this system. If we can harness it, we can do things that shouldn't be possible. The Indomitable dove toward the neutron star, its hull creaking and groaning as the incredible gravitational forces tried to tear it apart. The ship's artificial gravity systems worked overtime to keep the crew from being flattened against the bulkheads. But Chen wasn't trying to commit suicide. She was using the neutron star like a slingshot. As the ship fell toward the massive object, it gained speed exponentially. And just as the gravitational forces became too strong to survive, she ordered the engines to fire at maximum power. The result was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The Indomitable shot out of the gravity well like a bullet, moving faster than any ship its size had ever moved. The bioplasma beams that had been tracking it couldn't adjust quickly enough to compensate for this new trajectory. More importantly, the human ship was now moving fast enough that its railgun rounds had devastating impact power. When the tungsten projectiles hit the Nexus ships at these speeds, they didn't just penetrate the hull. They went completely through the enemy vessels and out the other side, leaving perfectly round holes that the biomechanical systems couldn't heal fast enough. 3 collective ships died in as many seconds, their living hulls convulsing as vital systems failed. The remaining Nexus vessels fell back, their tactical computers unable to calculate an effective response to tactics that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. That's when the Luminari decided to intervene. The energy beings had been watching this battle with growing interest, but now they recognized a threat that needed to be eliminated. They combined their individual forms into a single massive entity, a creature of pure thought and energy that could unmake matter with a focused thought. The Luminari collective mind reached out toward the human ship, preparing to simply delete it from existence. Their psychic assault was powerful enough to shut down any known computer system and drive any organic crew insane with terror. Instead, they encountered something they had never felt before. The human minds aboard the Indomitable weren't just resistant to fear, they were feeding on it. The danger, the impossible odds, the knowledge that they were facing enemies far more powerful than themselves while it wasn't breaking them. It was making them stronger. What manner of beings are these? The Luminari collective asked itself in shock. They should be paralyzed with terror. Captain Chen felt the alien presence trying to invade her mind, trying to fill her with despair and hopelessness. She pushed back with memories of human history. Every underdog victory. Every time her species had faced impossible odds and won anyway. Every moment when being stubborn and refusing to give up had made the difference between survival and extinction. The Luminari collective recoiled in confusion. These weren't the thoughts of an advanced species. These were the thoughts of predators. Creatures that had spent millions of years learning how to hunt things bigger and more dangerous than themselves. Fall back, the energy beings commanded each other. These creatures are unnatural, but Captain Chen wasn't done. While the Luminari were dealing with the shock of encountering minds they couldn't control, she ordered her ship to attack. The Indomitable's weapons weren't designed to fight energy beings, but humans had always been good at adapting. Load the special rounds, she ordered. Captain, those are experimental, warned her weapons officer. We've never tested them in combat. Today seems like a good day to try new things. Fire when ready. The special rounds were something human scientists had developed based on theoretical models of energy-based life forms. Instead of trying to destroy the energy beings directly, the rounds created localized electromagnetic pulses designed to disrupt energy patterns. The communications arrays on the Cosmic Witness worked overtime as they intercepted transmissions from the 3 alien fleets. What the observers heard changed everything they thought they knew about warfare, technology, and the nature of civilization itself. Get me tactical analysis on that primitive vessel, Commander Zilax of the Zephyrian fleet transmitted to his remaining ships. How is it still functional? The response came back quickly, but it made no sense. Commander, our sensors show massive structural damage to their hull. Their armor plating is cracked in 17 places. Their engine systems are operating at temperatures that should have caused catastrophic failure 10 minutes ago. By all logic, that ship should be a floating wreck. Then why isn't it? Unknown, sir. They appear to have backup systems for their backup systems, and their crew is performing manual repairs even while under fire. Dr. Xanos listened to this exchange with growing fascination. They're hearing the same thing we are, he told the other observers. The human ship shouldn't be able to function with that much damage. But it is functioning, pointed out Ambassador Yilan. Better than functioning. It's still fighting. On the tactical display, they watched as the Indomitable continued its approach to Kepler Station. The ship was moving slower now, clearly damaged, but it hadn't stopped. If anything, the crew seemed more determined than before. The Nexus Collective was having their own problems understanding the human tactics. Their biomechanical minds were designed to adapt to any threat by evolving new countermeasures. But how do you evolve a counter to insanity? Integration Node 7 to Fleet Mind, came the transmission. The human vessel's tactical patterns defy classification. They appear to be using what our databases term Berserker protocols. Explain Berserker protocols. Ancient combat methodology observed in primitive species. Involves deliberate abandonment of self-preservation instincts in favor of maximum aggression. Considered obsolete by all advanced civilizations. Assessment of effectiveness? There was a long pause before Integration Node 7 responded. highly effective against opponents unprepared for irrational tactics. We have lost 47% of our combat effectiveness against a single enemy vessel. The fleet mind processed this information with the cold logic that defined the collective. They were losing a battle against a ship that shouldn't even be able to hurt them. The tactical computers suggested this was impossible, but the evidence was floating around them in the form of wrecked collective vessels. The Luminari were having an even worse time understanding what they were facing. As energy beings who had evolved beyond physical form, they thought in terms of pure logic and mathematical precision. The humans weren't logical. They weren't precise. They were chaotic forces of nature that somehow achieved impossible results through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. These beings fight without fear, one Luminari observed to the collective consciousness. But it is not the absence of fear that drives them. It is the transformation of fear into fuel for greater aggression. How is such a thing possible? We do not know. Our models cannot account for a species that becomes more dangerous when threatened with destruction. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched her ship's status displays turn from yellow to red to colors that didn't have names. Half their weapons were offline. The main engines were held together by emergency welds and prayer. The hull had stress fractures running through sections that should have been impossible to damage, but her crew kept working. Chief Engineer Martinez had his people crawling through damaged conduits with tools and spare parts, fixing things that the manual said couldn't be fixed. Weapons Officer Kim was manually targeting enemies using backup systems that were older than her grandmother. Navigation Officer Patel was plotting courses using math and intuition, because the main computer had given up trying to calculate their impossible maneuvers. Captain, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from the tactical station, the alien fleets are regrouping. It looks like they're planning some kind of coordinated attack. How many ships? Best count is 73 vessels remaining across all three fleets. They're forming a sphere formation around our position. Captain Chen looked at the display and smiled. 73 ships against one. Those were the kind of odds that made human hearts beat faster. Outstanding. That means they're finally taking us seriously. Ma'am? Rodriguez looked confused. Think about it, Lieutenant. An hour ago, they were too busy fighting each other to notice us. Now they're so worried about one human ship that they're willing to stop their war and work together. That's progress. The alien alliance was indeed impressive. Crystal ships that could bend light itself worked alongside biomechanical vessels that adapted and evolved in real time, while energy beings provided coordination and strategic oversight. It was the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. It still wasn't enough. The problem was that each alien species fought the way their evolution had taught them. The Zephyrians used precision and overwhelming firepower. The Nexus Collective relied on adaptation and superior numbers. The Luminari employed perfect coordination and energy manipulation that bordered on magic. Humans fought like the descendants of persistence hunters who had spent millions of years chasing down prey that was bigger, faster, and stronger than they were. They fought dirty. They fought smart. And most importantly, they never, ever gave up. When the coordinated alien attack began, Captain Chen ordered her ship to do something that military historians would debate for centuries afterward. She flew directly toward the largest concentration of enemy ships. All power to forward shields, she commanded. Ram the Nexus Dreadnought, Captain. That will destroy us, protested her first officer. No, it won't. Trust me. The Indomitable accelerated toward the massive biomechanical vessel, its damaged engines screaming in protest. The Nexus ship was over 10 times larger and armed with weapons that could strip the atoms from matter itself. A collision should have resulted in the complete destruction of the human vessel. Instead, at the last possible second, Captain Chen ordered emergency reverse thrust and fired every weapon her ship had directly into the enemy's hull. The combination of kinetic impact and point-blank weapons fire punched through the Nexus ship's adaptive armor like it was paper. But the real genius of the maneuver wasn't the damage it caused. It was the position it put the human ship in. By flying inside the enemy formation, the Indomitable was now surrounded by alien vessels that couldn't fire on it without hitting each other. Brilliant, whispered Dr. Zanos as he watched the tactical display. They've turned the enemy's numbers against them. The alien fleets tried to reorganize, but the humans weren't giving them time. The Indomitable spun on its axis like a dancer, firing in all directions at once. Its railguns sent tungsten rounds through multiple enemy ships in single shots. Its missiles, programmed with simple but effective AI, sought out the most vulnerable points on each vessel and struck with surgical precision. More importantly, the human crew was learning. Each exchange taught them something new about their enemies. The Zephyrian shields were vulnerable to rapid, low-power hits that overloaded their crystal matrices. The Nexus ships couldn't adapt fast enough to prevent damage if you hit them in the same place repeatedly. The Luminary energy beings could be disrupted by electromagnetic pulses timed to their natural resonance frequencies. They're adapting faster than we are, observed Integration Node 7. This should not be possible. Explain. Our adaptive algorithms require 4.7 seconds to process new tactical data and implement countermeasures. The humans appear to be modifying their tactics every 2.3 seconds based on immediate battlefield feedback. How? Unknown. They may be using some form of enhanced intuitive processing that our sensors cannot detect. What the Nexus Collective couldn't understand was that humans didn't need computers to adapt. They did it naturally, instinctively, the same way their ancestors had learned to read the patterns of migrating herds and predict the behavior of dangerous predators. It was evolution in action, compressed into the space of a single battle. The Zephyrians were the first to break. After losing 12 crystal ships to a vessel they should have been able to destroy with a single shot, Commander Zilax made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance. We will observe and reassess. The beautiful crystal vessels pulled back, their commanders too shaken to continue the fight. They had spent centuries perfecting the art of precise, overwhelming force. The idea that raw determination and tactical flexibility could overcome their technological advantages was beyond their ability to process. The Nexus Collective held out longer, their biomechanical minds continuously trying to evolve new solutions to the human problem. But eventually, even they had to admit defeat. After losing over 60% of their fleet to a single enemy vessel, the fleet mind issued a tactical withdrawal order. That left only the Luminari, and they were already fleeing. The energy beings had never encountered minds that could resist their psychic attacks, much less minds that seemed to feed on conflict and danger. The human crew's thoughts were alien to them in the most literal sense, filled with concepts like glory in battle and honor I gay. The UES Indomitable limped toward Kepler Station like a wounded warrior refusing to fall. Steam vented from hull breaches. Sparks flew from damaged systems. Parts of the ship glowed red-hot from stress and weapons fire. But it kept flying, carrying its crew toward 53 million civilians who had given up hope of rescue. Captain Chen stood on her bridge and watched the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Kepler Station was a marvel of engineering, a spinning wheel of metal and crystal that had once been the jewel of galactic civilization. Now it looked like a fortress under siege, its outer hull scarred by weapons fire and debris impacts. Station approach in 15 minutes. Captain, reported Navigation Officer Patel. I'm reading massive structural damage to their docking bays. Most of them are sealed off. Find us one that isn't, Chen ordered. Even if we have to make our own. Behind them, the three alien fleets maintained their distance. The Zephyrians, Nexus Collective, and Luminari had stopped fighting each other entirely. Instead, they watched the human ship with a mixture of fear, confusion, and something that might have been respect. On the Cosmic Witness, the galactic observers were frantically transmitting reports to their home governments. What they had witnessed would change the balance of power throughout the galaxy, and every species needed to know about it immediately. Emergency transmission to the High Council. Ambassador Yilan spoke into her communications array. This is Ambassador Yilan aboard the observation vessel Cosmic Witness. We have encountered a new species that has just defeated the combined fleets of the Zephyrian Empire, the Nexus Collective, and the Luminary Confederation. I repeat, a single ship from an unknown species has just won a battle against three of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. The response came back quickly, filled with disbelief. Ambassador, please confirm your last transmission. Did you say a single ship? Confirmed. One vessel, designation UES Indomitable, crewed by beings called humans. They are approaching Kepler Station now, apparently to rescue the civilian population. What are their demands? What do they want in exchange for withdrawing? Ambassador Yilan paused, suddenly understanding something important. They're not making any demands. They came here because someone asked for help. The silence on the other end of the transmission was telling. In galactic politics, nobody did anything without expecting something in return. The idea of a species that would risk everything to help strangers was beyond the experience of most civilized governments. Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Chen was dealing with more immediate concerns. Her ship was falling apart around her, but they were so close to the station that she could taste victory. "Captain," called Chief Engineer Martinez over the intercom, "I've got good news and bad news. Give me the bad news first. The main reactor is overheating. We've got maybe 20 minutes before we have to shut it down or risk a core breach. And the good news? 20 minutes is probably enough time to dock and start evacuating civilians." Captain Chen smiled grimly. "Then we'd better work fast. All hands, prepare for emergency docking procedures." The Indomitable approached Kepler Station like a dying ship determined to complete one last mission. Which technically it was. The human vessel's hull was cracked in dozens of places. Its engines were held together by emergency welds and stubborn engineering. Its weapon systems were barely functional, but its crew was still human. As they approached the station, Captain Chen opened a communication channel. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Indomitable. We're here to get you out of here." The response came back immediately, filled with joy and disbelief. "Indomitable, this is Station Commander Tala Vex. We can't believe you're here." "How many ships did Earth send?" "Just us," Chen replied simply. "But we're enough. Prepare your people for immediate evacuation." Just one ship? Against 3 entire fleets? The fleets aren't a problem anymore. We've convinced them to take a break from fighting. Now let's focus on getting your people to safety." On the station, 53 million beings from dozens of different species began the largest emergency evacuation in galactic history. But this wasn't the panicked flight they had expected. This was an organized rescue operation led by a species that treated impossible odds as a personal challenge. The human crew worked with efficiency that amazed the station personnel. They didn't waste time with bureaucracy or lengthy procedures. They simply identified the most vulnerable populations and started moving them to safety. "Families with young children first," Captain Chen ordered. "Then elderly and injured. Everyone else forms orderly lines." "Captain," asked Commander Vex, "your ship can't possibly hold 53 million people." "You're right," Chen agreed. "But we're not taking them in our ship. We're taking them in theirs." The humans had commandeered every functional shuttle, cargo hauler, and transport vessel on the station. Under their direction, the evacuation fleet grew from one battered warship to hundreds of civilian vessels of every size and description. "This is impossible," observed Dr. Zanos as he watched the evacuation begin. "They're organizing the largest refugee movement in recorded history using nothing but determination and basic logistics. It's not impossible," corrected Captain Vorth. "It's just something none of us would have tried." The alien fleets watched from their safe distance as the human-led evacuation gained momentum. Ship after ship launched from Kepler Station, carrying families and individuals to safety beyond the combat zone. The operation was chaotic but effective, driven by a species that had apparently never learned the word impossible. Commander Zilax of the Zephyrian fleet studied the tactical displays with growing unease. "They're not just rescuing the civilians," he told his officers. "They're making us look like monsters. Sir, think about it. We've been fighting over this station for 3 months. In all that time, did any of us try to evacuate the civilians? Did we even consider their safety?" The bridge of the eternal harmony fell silent as the implications sank in. They had been so focused on winning their war that they had forgotten about the millions of innocent beings caught in the crossfire. The Nexus Collective was having similar realizations. "Integration Node 7 to Fleet Mind," came the transmission. "The human actions suggest we have been operationally inefficient. Explain." "Our primary objective was control of Kepler Station and its neutron star energy source. The presence of civilian populations was considered an acceptable complication. The humans have demonstrated that civilian evacuation should have been our first priority." "Why?" "Because a station without civilians is just a station. A station with civilian casualties is a war crime." The Luminari were perhaps the most disturbed by what they were witnessing. As beings of pure energy and logic, they had calculated that the civilian losses were within acceptable parameters for achieving their strategic objectives. But watching the humans risk everything to save strangers forced them to question their own moral calculations. "We have made an error," the collective consciousness admitted to itself. "We have become so advanced that we have forgotten what it means to be civilized." As the evacuation continued, something unexpected happened. Ships from all three alien fleets began to break formation and approach the station. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez, "we're receiving transmission from multiple alien vessels. They're requesting permission to assist with the evacuation." Captain Chen raised an eyebrow. "Are they armed?" "Yes, ma'am, but they're powering down their weapons systems. It appears to be a genuine offer of assistance. Tell them they can help, but any hostile action will be met with immediate retaliation. Ma'am, our weapons are barely functional. They don't know that. Within hours, the evacuation of Kepler Station had become the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. Zephyrian crystal ships used their precision systems to carefully extract people from damaged sections of the station. Nexus vessels adapted their biomechanical hulls to create temporary living spaces for refugees. Luminary energy beings coordinated the massive logistics operation with perfect efficiency, and at the center of it all was the battered human warship, its crew working around the clock to make sure everyone got out safely. The final transmission from Kepler Station came 18 hours after the Indomitable had first entered the battle zone. "This is Station Commander Vex to all vessels. Kepler Station is now empty. All 53 million civilians have been successfully evacuated. I repeat, the evacuation is complete." A cheer went up from every ship in the fleet, human and alien alike. They had done something that nobody thought was possible. They had turned a war zone into a rescue operation and saved every single life. Captain Chen stood on her bridge and watched the empty station spinning slowly in space. The Indomitable was finally showing signs of shutting down, its overtaxed systems beginning to fail one by one. But it had done its job. "Captain," said Chief Martinez over the intercom, "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're not going to make it home. The reactor's failing and we don't have enough power for a jump to hyperspace." "That's okay, Chief," Chen replied calmly. "We did what we came here to do." But before the human ship could die in space, something remarkable happened.